I need your space, Mom. It's time you figured out your next steps. Elsewhere. Juno's words hit me like a freight train. Standing in the doorway of my own home, I was confronted with a reality I had never anticipated. My daughter, my own flesh and blood, demanding I leave my home for her convenience. Juno, this is my home, I managed, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. It's just, with the baby coming, I need more space, and you have your studio, right? Can't you just find somewhere else for a bit? Juno's tone softened, but her eyes were unyielding, a mirror of her father's stubbornness. Graham, leaning against the kitchen counter with a cup of coffee in hand, finally spoke up. Eloise, maybe it's not such a bad idea. A change of scenery could do you good. We need to think about what's best for Juno right now. I looked between them, my family, sensing the divide that had grown over the years. It wasn't just about space. It was a culmination of years of bending backwards for them, of making sacrifices. My transition to freelance work wasn't just a career choice. It was a necessity to keep our lives afloat while Graham struggled with his career and to provide for Juno's ambitions. Best for Juno? My voice cracked, the weight of my sacrifices pressing down on me. And what about what's best for me? Does that not matter anymore? Eloise, we're just asking for a little compromise. For family? Graham added, his voice attempting warmth but edged with an expectation of compliance. A little compromise? I laughed, a hollow sound. That seems to be all I've ever done. Compromise my time, my career, my dreams, and now my home? Juno's gaze faltered, but her resolve did not. Mom, please. It's not forever, just until I get back on my feet after the baby is born. I stared at them, the reality of my situation sinking in. My family saw me not as a pillar, but as an obstacle, an inconvenience in their lives that could be moved aside when no longer needed. Fine, I said finally, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. I'll go, but remember, actions have consequences. I hope you're prepared for them. As I walked away, I didn't look back. I couldn't. The pain of betrayal was too sharp, too raw. My own home, a place where I had poured my heart and soul into making it a sanctuary for us, was now a battleground. Graham and Juno's conversation faded behind me as I ascended the stairs to pack a few belongings. Each step was heavy, laden with the realization that my sacrifices had been for nothing. They had taken everything from me, and now they were taking my home. But as I zipped up my suitcase, a resolve settled over me. I would leave, but this was not the end. It was a new beginning, a chance to reclaim my life, my dignity, and perhaps, in time, my family. But on my terms. I will find my way, I whispered to the empty room, and when I do, I hope they realize the true cost of their demands. With one last glance at the home I had built, I stepped out into the unknown, the door closing behind me with a finality that echoed in my heart. The silence of my new, smaller studio apartment was deafening. Gone were the familiar sounds of my old home, the laughter, the arguments, the life that I had built, brick by brick, only to be pushed out. I sat at my makeshift desk, surrounded by boxes still unpacked, the glow of my computer screen the only light in the room. The stark contrast between my past and present life couldn't be more apparent, and as I sifted through emails, trying to find solace in work, the doorbell rang, a sharp interruption to my solitude. It was Graham, his presence at my doorstep both a surprise and a harbinger of unwelcome news. Eloise, we need to talk, he said, stepping into the dim light of my apartment without waiting for an invitation. What's left to talk about, Graham? I asked, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside. It's about the house and finances. Juno's needs are more than we anticipated. We're going to need more help from you. I stared at him, incredulous. More help? After everything, you're asking for more? It's for your daughter, Eloise. You wouldn't want her to suffer, would you? His words were manipulative, aiming to guilt-trip me into compliance. Graham, I've given everything, my home, my peace, my life. What more do you want from me? My voice rose, a mix of anger and disbelief coloring my tone. Just think about it. It's for Juno, he repeated, his voice cold, the fatherly concern feigned at best. As he left, his words lingered in the air, a toxic reminder of the betrayal that had become my reality. They expected more from me, always more, never considering the cost to my own well-being. The following day, I decided to visit the house, not to relent to their demands, but to confront the situation head-on. The sight of my former home, now overtaken by Juno's expanding needs, was a stark representation of my displacement. Juno greeted me with a tepid smile, her earlier boldness replaced with a veneer of guilt. "Mom, I didn't think it would come to this, but we really need the help. Juno, I've helped enough. It's time you and your father figure things out on your own. I've been pushed out of my home, asked to give up my life for you, and now you ask for more?" My voice, though firm, was not without pain. "But Mom, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do?" Her entitlement was evident, expecting me to solve problems of her own making. "That's something you should have thought about before. I'm your mother, not your fallback plan." Turning to leave, I felt a surge of resolve. No longer would I be the silent supporter, taken for granted and expected to give endlessly. As I walked away, I heard Juno's frustrated voice behind me. "You're just going to leave your daughter like this?" I didn't look back. "You left me long before this, Juno. It's time you learn what life demands." That night, as I lay in the quiet of my new reality, the idea began to form. If they expected me to give more, then I would, but not in the way they anticipated. It was time to reclaim what was mine, to show Graham and Juno the consequences of their actions. My contributions, my sacrifices, would no longer be invisible. They had awakened a determination within me, a drive to seek justice for the wrongs done. And as the plan took shape in my mind, a sense of empowerment enveloped me. They had underestimated me, but they would soon learn the true cost of their demands. My revenge would be my return, my reclamation of dignity, and it would start with taking back what was rightfully mine. My resolve had never been clearer as I embarked on my plan of retribution. The first step was uncovering the full extent of Graham's deceit. Over the years, he had masterfully crafted the narrative that he was the financial backbone of our family, a story I knew all too well to be false. But it was time the truth came to light, not just for me, but for Juno too. I began by meticulously gathering financial statements, bank records, and property deeds, evidence of my contributions, my sacrifices. It was during this search that I discovered something more insidious. Documents hidden away in a file I had never seen before revealed a shocking truth. Graham had been funneling money from our joint accounts into a private one I knew nothing about. The revelation was a cold, hard slap in the face, a betrayal that cut deeper than I could have imagined. Armed with this information, I confronted Graham, demanding answers. "Graham, what is this?" I slammed the documents on the kitchen table in front of him, the numbers and transactions a glaring testament to his betrayal. He looked up, his expression a mix of surprise and guilt. "Eloise, it's not what you think. I was saving that money for us, for our future." "Our future?" I scoffed, disbelief coloring my tone. "Or your future without me. You've been lying to me, to Juno, undermining my contributions, making me out to be the lesser partner in our marriage." Graham's attempts to explain were feeble, his words empty. "Eloise, I just thought—" "You thought you'd get away with it," I interrupted, my voice firm. "You thought I'd never find out. But I did, and now everything changes." The confrontation left Graham rattled, his facade of control crumbling. But for me, it was the catalyst for my next move. If Graham could betray me in such a fundamental way, then all bets were off. I took my findings to a lawyer, explaining my situation and my desire to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The lawyer, a woman of sharp wit and even sharper legal acumen, laid out a plan that was both brilliant and ruthless. "We'll begin with the house," she said, her eyes alight with strategic fire. "It's in your name alone, correct?" "Yes," I confirmed, a sense of empowerment growing within me. "Then you have more power than you realize. We can leverage this to not only secure your financial independence, but also to send a clear message to Graham and Juno." The plan was simple yet effective. I would sell the house, the one asset solely in my name, and reclaim the financial stability Graham had tried to steal from me. But more than that, it would be my declaration of independence, a demonstration that I was no longer the woman they could manipulate and betray without consequence. As I initiated the process, my interactions with Graham and Juno became strained, their demands and manipulations more desperate. Yet, with each attempt to sway me, my resolve only strengthened. "Mom, you can't do this to us," Juno pleaded one day, her voice tinged with panic. "Where will we go? What about the baby?" "You should have thought of that before," I replied. my voice devoid of the warmth it once held for her. "You both made your choices. Now I'm making mine." Graham, too, tried to appeal to my sense of family, of loyalty, but his words fell on deaf ears. The man I had married, the father of my child, was a stranger to me now, his true nature revealed in the light of his actions. As the sale of the house moved forward, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For years, I had been bound by my roles as a wife and mother, my own needs and desires secondary to those of my family. But no longer. I was taking back control, forging a new path on my own terms. And as for Graham and Juno, they would soon learn the true cost of their ingratitude and betrayal. My revenge was not just about punishment. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my independence, and my life. The day I left for the last time, the air was thick with an unspoken tension. Graham and Juno stood in the living room of the house that was no longer ours, their expressions a mix of confusion and anger. They had just learned of the sale, a transaction done quietly, without their knowledge. "You sold the house?" Graham's voice was low, disbelief etched into every word. "Our home, Eloise? How could you?" "It's in my name, Graham. My home. And I decided to sell it," I said, my voice steady, betraying none of the emotional turmoil swirling inside me. Juno, her hands cradling her growing belly, looked from Graham to me, her eyes wide. "But where will we go? What about the baby?" "That's something you should have considered before demanding I leave my own home," I replied, the coldness in my voice surprising even me. "This is betrayal, Eloise, pure and simple," Graham said, his voice rising in anger. "Betrayal?" I laughed, a bitter sound. "You want to talk about betrayal? Look in the mirror, Graham. You lied, you manipulated, you took everything I gave and asked for more." The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging heavy between us. I turned to leave, my heart heavy, but my resolve unshaken. This was the end of one chapter, but the beginning of another, one where I was in control. As I reached the door, Graham's voice stopped me. "You'll regret this, Eloise. You're tearing this family apart." I paused, my hand on the doorknob. Without turning back, I said, "No, Graham. This family was torn apart long ago. I'm just the first to acknowledge it." Leaving the house behind, I didn't look back. The finality of the moment was overwhelming, but beneath the sorrow and betrayal, there was a burgeoning sense of freedom. For the first time in years, I was free from the expectations and demands that had defined my life. In the weeks that followed, the reality of my actions set in. Graham and Juno were forced to find a new place to live, their comfortable existence upended by my decision. Rumors and whispers followed me in our small community, some sympathetic, others critical. But none of that mattered. I had taken a stand, reclaimed my agency, and in doing so, had started down a path of self-discovery and independence. My new apartment became a sanctuary, a place of peace and creativity. Work flourished as I threw myself into projects, my graphic design business thriving as never before. And in the quiet moments, I found a strength I didn't know I had, a resilience forged through years of sacrifice and hardship. The phone calls from Graham and Juno became less frequent, their attempts to guilt me into reversing the sale unsuccessful. Each call was a reminder of the chasm between us, a gap that had widened too much to ever fully bridge. One day, as I sat at my desk, the sun setting outside my window, I realized I no longer felt anger or bitterness toward Graham and Juno. Instead, there was a sense of pity for them, for their inability to see beyond their own needs and desires. I had moved on, building a life that was truly mine, free from the constraints of my old one. The sale of the house, once a source of contention and pain, was now a symbol of my liberation, a decisive step toward a future filled with possibility. And as I looked forward to what lay ahead, I knew that the best revenge wasn't the pain I had inflicted on Graham and Juno, but the life I was building for myself, one where I was no longer a victim of their selfishness and deceit. It was a life where I was finally, truly free. The completion of the house sale marked not just the end of an era, but the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one where I stood firmly on my own 2 feet, unburdened by the expectations and manipulations of those I had once called family. My new apartment, once a symbol of my forced exile, had become a haven of peace and creativity. The walls, adorned with my own designs, reflected a life that was entirely mine. My freelance work, now more than just a job, was a testament to my resilience, a thriving business built from the ashes of my former life. It was during this time of renewal that I received a call from Graham, his voice a mix of desperation and anger. "Eloise, you've taken everything from us. How could you do this to your own family?" "Family?" I echoed, the word bitter on my tongue. "A family supports each other, Graham. What you and Juno did was far from supportive. It was selfish." "You're going to regret this, Eloise. You can't just start over and expect us to disappear. We're your family, whether you like it or not." "I've made my peace with that, Graham. It's time you make yours," I replied, my voice calm but firm. The call ended with a click, his threats hanging in the air, but they no longer had any power over me. The weeks turned into months, and my life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The drama and turmoil that had once defined my existence seemed like distant memories. But I knew that true closure had not yet been achieved. The final act of my plan was still unfolding, a silent countdown to the moment when Graham and Juno would realize the full extent of their actions. That moment came unexpectedly. I had ventured out to a local cafe, a small luxury in my new life of independence, when I spotted them. Graham and Juno were seated at a table near the window, their conversation tense and fraught with emotion. I could overhear snippets of their dialogue, words tinged with regret and desperation. "Can't believe she did this to us," Juno was saying, her voice a mix of disbelief and sorrow. "It's her revenge, Juno. She's made her point," Graham replied, his tone resigned. The sight of them, so defeated and broken, stirred something within me. Not satisfaction or triumph, but a profound sadness for what could have been. We had once been a family, bound by love and shared dreams. Now, all that remained were the shattered pieces of our once happy life. As I left the cafe unnoticed by them, I felt a chapter of my life closing. My revenge, though justified, had come at a great cost. The family I had once cherished was no more, their place in my life now occupied by memories and lessons learned. In the solitude of my apartment, I reflected on the journey I had undertaken. From the depths of betrayal and loss, I had emerged stronger, more self-assured. My revenge, while necessary, was not the source of my strength. It was the realization that I alone was the architect of my happiness, the master of my destiny. And so, as I looked towards the future, I knew that the best was yet to come, not because of the revenge I had exacted, but despite it. My life, once defined by others, was now my own, and with each passing day I would build it, piece by piece, into something beautiful and unbreakable. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and opportunities, but I faced it head-on, with a heart full of hope and a spirit unyielded. For I had learned that true strength comes not from vengeance, but from the courage to move forward, to forgive, and ultimately, to find peace within oneself. The day of reckoning arrived sooner than I anticipated. A crisp morning breeze accompanied my steps as I approached the house I once called home, the real estate agent beside me. The for sale sign stood prominently in the front yard, a beacon of the impending change. Graham and Juno, unaware of my arrival, were about to face the reality of their situation head-on. As I rang the doorbell, my heart pounded with a mixture of anticipation and resolve. The door swung open, and there stood Graham, his expression shifting from surprise to disbelief as he saw me. "Eloise, what are you doing here?" he stammered, confusion written all over his face. "I'm here to show the house, Graham. It's time you both faced the consequences of your actions," I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the emotional turmoil within. Juno appeared behind Graham, her eyes widening in shock. "You can't be serious, Mom? You're really going through with this?" "Yes, Juno, I am. You both seemed to forget that this house was the one thing I had left. You took everything else from me," I said, the words laced with a bitterness I no longer bothered to hide. The real estate agent, a neutral party in the midst of our familial storm, stepped forward. "If you'll allow us, we have potential buyers on the way. It would be best if we could proceed without any complications." Graham and Juno exchanged a look of desperation, the reality of their situation finally dawning on them. "Eloise, please, there has to be another way. We'll be left with nothing," Graham pleaded, his voice breaking. "You left me with nothing when you demanded I leave my own home," I countered, my resolve hardening. "I warned you, actions have consequences. It's time you learned that lesson." As the potential buyers arrived, Graham and Juno retreated into the house, their whispers a cacophony of regret and disbelief. The real estate agent and I led the buyers through the property, each room a reminder of the life I once lived, the memories I once cherished. After the showing, as I stood in the living room for what could be the last time, Juno approached me, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I never wanted it to come to this." Her apology, though heartfelt, came too late. "Juno, I hope one day you understand why I had to do this. Maybe then you'll forgive me as I'm trying to forgive you." Leaving the house behind, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. The sale was more than just a transaction. It was a symbol of my liberation from the chains of betrayal and manipulation. Graham and Juno's future was now in their own hands, just as mine was in mine. The days that followed were a blur of legal proceedings and finalizations. The house sold quickly, the market eager to claim such a prized property. And with the final signature, I closed the chapter on a significant part of my life. As I sat at my apartment, the deed to the house now transferred, I realized the depth of what I had accomplished. I had stood up for myself, faced my betrayers, and emerged victorious. But it was a victory tinged with sadness, for in gaining my independence, I had lost my family. Yet as I looked toward the future, I knew that this was only the beginning. My journey of self-discovery and empowerment was far from over. I had found strength in my solitude, resilience in my resolve, and a sense of peace in my decisions. Graham and Juno's path would be their own to forge, just as mine was now solely in my hands. The road ahead was uncertain, but I faced it with a newfound confidence, ready for whatever challenges and opportunities lay ahead. The aftermath of the house sale was like a storm that had passed, leaving behind a trail of devastation and a new, uncertain path forward. Graham and Juno, now without a home, were forced to confront the reality of their situation. The comfortable life they had known at my expense was gone. I heard about their struggles through the grapevine, the small town's network buzzing with gossip. They had moved into a small, cramped apartment, a far cry from the spacious comfort of the home I had sold. It was in this setting that I decided to confront them one last time, to see for myself the consequences of my actions. Knocking on their door, I braced myself for the encounter. Juno answered, her appearance a stark contrast to the vibrant, confident woman she once was. Her eyes, once full of life, now held a weariness that spoke volumes. "Mom," she said, her voice a mixture of surprise and resignation. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see how you're doing," I replied, stepping into the dimly lit apartment. The space was cramped, cluttered with boxes and makeshift furniture, a far cry from the comfort of our former home. Graham appeared from the other room, his expression hardening at the sight of me. "Come to gloat, Eloise? To see the results of your revenge?" "No, Graham, I came to see if there's anything left of the family we once were," I said, my voice steady. The conversation that followed was tense, filled with accusations and recriminations. Juno and Graham blamed me for their current situation, unable to see their own roles in the downfall of our family. "You took everything from us, Mom. How could you?" Juno's voice cracked with emotion, her earlier bravado gone. "I did what I had to do, Juno. You and Graham made your choices, and I made mine," I replied, the pain of our broken relationship evident in my words. Graham, ever the antagonist, sneered, "You think you've won, Eloise, by selling the house and leaving us like this?" "This wasn't about winning, Graham. It was about respect, about recognizing my contributions and sacrifices, something you never did," I said, my resolve firm. As the conversation unfolded, it became clear that the chasm between us was too wide to bridge. The pain and betrayal had left deep scars, too deep for easy forgiveness or reconciliation. Leaving their apartment, I felt a mix of emotions. There was sadness for the family we could have been, anger at the years of manipulation and disrespect, and surprisingly a flicker of hope. Hope that maybe this ordeal would be a wake-up call for Juno and Graham, a chance for them to reflect on their actions and perhaps find a way to change. The walk back to my apartment was a reflective one. I had sought revenge, and I had achieved it. But at what cost? The satisfaction of seeing Graham and Juno confront the consequences of their actions was overshadowed by the realization that our family was forever altered. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life, my work, and my sense of self. The drama and revenge that had consumed me were now in the past, a chapter closed. I had emerged stronger, more independent, but the journey had left its mark. The lesson was a hard one, learned through pain and loss. True strength comes not from vengeance, but from the ability to move forward, to forgive oneself, and to find peace in the aftermath of turmoil. And so, as I continued to build my new life, I held on to that lesson. The future was uncertain, but I faced it with a heart open to new beginnings, and a spirit healed from the wounds of the past. The road ahead was mine to shape, and I stepped forward with determination and hope, ready for whatever lay ahead. Years had passed since the house sale, years in which the silence between us had grown into a chasm seemingly insurmountable. I had moved on, my life now filled with new challenges and achievements, my past with Graham and Juno a distant, if painful, memory. It was a crisp autumn morning when I received a letter, its handwriting unfamiliar. The return address bore Juno's name, a name that stirred a myriad of emotions within me. With a deep breath, I opened the envelope, bracing myself for what might be inside. "Dear Mom," the letter began, each word heavy with an emotion that seemed to reach out from the page. "It's taken me years to find the courage to write this. I know I've caused you unimaginable pain, and for that, I am deeply sorry. My actions were unforgivable, driven by selfishness and a failure to see beyond my own needs." I sat down, the letter trembling in my hands. Juno's words, so raw and honest, were a far cry from the daughter I remembered. "I've spent a lot of time reflecting on my life, on the choices I made, and the people I hurt. It's been a difficult journey, one filled with regret and a deep desire for redemption. I understand if you can't forgive me, but I needed you to know that I am truly sorry for everything." The letter continued, detailing Juno's life since we last spoke. She talked about the challenges of raising her child alone, of the hardships and the lessons learned along the way. It was a story of growth and change, of a young woman who had faced the consequences of her actions and emerged stronger for it. "I'm reaching out not just to apologize, but to ask for a chance to start anew, to rebuild what we once had, in whatever form that might take. I miss you, Mom. I miss our family, despite everything that's happened." Finishing the letter, I found myself at a loss. The emotions that coursed through me were a tangled web of sorrow, anger, and surprisingly, hope. Juno's words had opened old wounds, but they also offered the possibility of healing, of reconciliation. The decision to respond weighed heavily on me. Could I forgive her? Could we ever rebuild what had been so thoroughly destroyed? The answer was unclear, the path forward fraught with uncertainty. Days passed as I pondered Juno's letter, her words echoing in my mind. It was a conversation with an old friend that finally gave me clarity. "Forgiveness isn't just for those who wrong us," she said. "It's for us, too. A way to let go of the past and move forward." And so I wrote back to Juno. My letter was cautious but open, expressing my own pain and the long journey I had taken towards healing. I spoke of the possibility of starting anew, not as the family we once were, but as something different, something new. "Let's take it one step at a time," I wrote. "Building bridges takes effort from both sides, and I'm willing to try if you are." Sending the letter was like releasing a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Whether Juno and I could truly reconcile remained to be seen, but the door was open, a crack of light in the long darkness that had separated us. The days turned into weeks, and eventually Juno replied. Her response was filled with gratitude and hope, a mirror of my own cautious optimism. We agreed to meet, to talk face to face after so many years apart. Sitting across from her that day, I saw not the selfish young woman who had demanded so much from me, but a mature, thoughtful individual who had faced her demons and emerged stronger. The conversation was difficult, filled with tears and apologies, but also with laughter and shared memories. It was the beginning of a new chapter for us, one marked not by the pain of the past, but by the promise of the future. Forgiveness had opened the door to a new relationship, one built on understanding, respect, and love. As I looked at Juno, now not just my daughter, but a fellow survivor of life's trials, I knew that the path ahead would not be easy. But for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about the journey we would take together, hand in hand towards a brighter future.
My name is Tanya. and I am post-divorce. And other than that, I wanted to tell it in case you happen to be there where this story reaches out as the voice of a similar situation and says, "Be strong." Perhaps just maybe my story might inspire some help or perspective. All right, so some backstory here. My parents divorced when I was 7 years old. Because my dad was a Navy SEAL, and so he traveled, literally, around the world often. Eventually, my parents' breakup was due to this. Then my mom married a man named Paul, and I went to live with them. Paul was seriously abusive to me. The worst part was that my mom knew about it, but let Paul do whatever he wanted. She kind of turned a blind eye to what was happening in our house. My dad would visit from time to time, and when he did, I would spend the weekend at his place. But being young and naive, I was too scared to talk about what was happening to me, even with my dad. You see, I've always been really close to my dad. He loved me and made me feel like the most important person in his life. When I was almost done with middle school, there was one time when I went to see my dad. We headed to the beach together, and I was wearing a pair of beach shorts. It was then that he noticed some bruises on my thighs. "Hey, what is that on your leg?" Nothing. I just got hurt." "How? That is a pretty rough bruise." I just don't remember." "You don't remember? Are you keeping something from me, Bunny?" "Dad, no. I must have gotten it in PE." "You know you can tell me about anything. I may be away a lot, and maybe you're closer to your mom, but my love for you is just as strong, if not stronger." "Dad, actually, I'm sorry I haven't told you this, but Paul, he's cruel to me." "Cruel? How?" "Well, sometimes he hits me. I'm not saying it's without reason. I bear some blame too. One day I left the door open and his dog escaped. He used his belt on me." "What? Where was your mom?" "Well, Mom turns a blind eye to it, darling. Fear not, this ends right now. I'm taking you to my place, and you will be staying with me. I'll have a serious talk with your mom. This ends now." Following that, my father took charge of the entire situation. After legal proceedings, he successfully obtained full custody of me. I moved in with him, and honestly, it was a way better setup. Due to his work commitments, my father had to be away often. During those times, I stayed at my aunt's place, which was just a few blocks away. My mother did extend an apology and attempted to reconcile when I initially moved in with my father. However, she eventually cut me off. The truth is, I was not as close to her as I was to Dad. Anyway, I soon left for medical school, earned a degree, and obtained my license. It had always been my dream to become a cardiologist. Both my dad and my aunt were immensely proud of my achievements. During that phase of life, they were the only family I had. I was not particularly outgoing, but I had a couple of close friends. Given my profession as a doctor, it was my responsibility to be warm and approachable to people, so I made an effort to become more extroverted. To my surprise, I turned out to be quite adept at it. My first encounter with my husband, Justin, took place at a karaoke bar. Normally, a karaoke bar would not have been my top choice for hanging out, but it happened to be my friend's birthday, so we went there anyway. Justin happened to be there too. He needed a partner for the time of his life, and since I'd casually mentioned in front of my friends that Justin was cute, they practically pushed me to do it with him. It turned out to be a really enjoyable night, and we exchanged numbers. As we continued to get to know each other, we began dating, and I introduced him to my dad. After a while, my dad liked him right away. Justin had an inherently likable personality. He worked as a marketing assistant in the corporate world and gave me the love and care that I had lacked before my dad stepped in. He seemed like a very composed and well-rounded individual. He expressed a desire to start a family, And just 1 year into our relationship, he took me back to the same karaoke bar where we first met to propose to me. I think it's time for us to start the family we've always talked about. What do you mean, babe? Tanya, there is something I've been wanting to ask you for a while now. What is it, Justin? Well, when we first met at that karaoke bar, I had no idea I was meeting the love of my life. You have brought so much happiness and warmth into my life, and I can't imagine spending it with anyone else. Tanya, will you marry me? Oh, baby, yes. I'll be completely honest. While some people might find it perfectly okay to get married within a year, for me and the emotional walls I had built over time, it felt a bit early. I said yes at the moment, but had many thoughts about it afterward. I loved Justin deeply. I was afraid that if I asked for more time, he might consider ending our relationship, so I decided to go along with it. We had a very private wedding ceremony. I invited my mother, but she didn't show up, which was somewhat disappointing because, after all, she was my mother. However, my dad was there, and I was immensely grateful for his presence. He walked me down the aisle, and I was officially married to Justin. A year into our marriage, we were blessed with a beautiful baby girl. I remember after my delivery, the room was filled with balloons and flowers as everyone came to visit. My dad, Justin, and his parents. As a new mother, I decided to take some time off work to be with my daughter. That early time with Amanda was incredible, and I still cherish every moment of her babyhood. There's truly nothing as beautiful as bringing a child into this world. It is a testament to the wonders of life. Justin was working during this time, but eventually I had to return to my job. Justin was something else when it came to being a dad. He had this knack for being super playful and gentle with our daughter. I mean, the guy would even let her go to town with makeup on his face. He was a real sweetheart as a dad. But here's the thing, with both of us having to head back to work, we decided to bring in a nanny to look after Amanda. She was a little bundle of energy, and we wanted her to have the best care while we were away. After some time, I got pregnant again, and then out of the blue came the shocker. The doctor revealed that I was not just expecting one more addition to our family. We were having twins. It wasn't exactly what we had planned for, but let me tell you, it sure brought a boatload of joy into our lives. Little did we know that with the arrival of our children, the dynamics of our marriage were about to shift. Justin wasn't exactly thrilled that I earned more than him. He didn't openly discuss it with me, nor did he mention it. But I got wind of his feelings when our friends Carrie and Dylan came over for dinner during my 3rd trimester. So how are you guys feeling about the babies on the way? Oh, we are excited, a little nervous, but mostly excited. Speaking of babies, have you guys thought about names yet? Oh yes, we've been brainstorming. We want something unique, but not too out there, you know. Any favorites so far? Well, we have been tossing around a few ideas, but haven't settled on anything just yet. How about family names? Those can be really meaningful. Absolutely. We've been shopping a lot lately. We've been researching strollers that can accommodate multiple babies. It's been overwhelming, but we'll figure it out. It's amazing how much stuff you need for 2 babies, right? Just tell me about it. Our checklist keeps getting longer. Tanya, do you miss being at work a bit? You know, being a doctor is tough, but when you treat people and help them, it just feels so good to see their smiles. Wow, a corporate worker and a doctor. Do you even manage to find time to make all these babies? Come on, Justin. I'm pretty sure your wife must be the money bag in the house, you know. Well, you know how it is, Dylan. I actually earn more than Tanya. Ask Crew this. Let's bring out the dessert. I could not believe what Justin had said. Why would he just lie about something like that? After Dylan and Carrie left, while we were doing the dishes, I finally decided to talk to him about it. Justin, can we talk for a moment? So what's on your mind? You said you earn more than me, but that's not true, is it? No, it's not true. Justin, why on earth would you lie about something like that? I don't know, I guess I was just embarrassed. It felt awkward. Embarrassed? I had no idea this was such a sensitive topic for you. I am not sensitive. I'm a man, and I should be the one in charge. You've never complained about it before. What has got you so worked up now? I just don't want people to think I'm some kind of loser. Okay, Justin, if it works for us, it works for us. Who cares what other people think? Yeah, whatever. Justin's response left me feeling uncomfortable. It came across as somewhat misogynistic. What was the problem if our arrangement worked for us? I never had an issue with having a husband who contributed less financially. After all, money is not what keeps a family together. At that point, I had a lot on my plate, so I did not dwell on it too much. 2 months later, the big day finally arrived. My pregnancy had been complicated, but eventually, I gave birth to a set of twin baby boys. I held my precious little boys, Abe and Leon, with both my hands in the hospital bed. Our family feels complete. Baby, you've made me the happiest man alive. I love you. It was not all me. Babe, Amanda, look at your baby brothers. Aren't they so cute? Baby brothers. Yes, sweetheart. Do you want to sit next to Mom? Yes. Say hello to your baby brothers, Amanda. At that moment, I felt an overwhelming contentment with my life. I dreamt of being the best mom to all my kids, something I had never gotten from my mother. My deepest desire was to provide them with everything they wished for and shield them from all the bad things in the world. Soon I took the babies home, and we had the whole nursery set up for them. Justin and I both took some time off work. While Justin eventually returned to the office, I didn't. Things got really tough at home, juggling the care of the babies and Amanda. We were in a tight spot financially, and things weren't exactly rosy. I had a strong desire to give my family the best of everything, and I had the means to do so. But we also needed a parent at home to take care of the kids. It was a challenging situation, and we needed to find a way to make it work. The issue was the significant income gap between us. Justin brought in only $30,000 a year, while I earned $150,000 a year. From my perspective, it made sense for me to continue working. I had a good career and a well-paying job with the potential for salary growth. I thought I would talk things out with Justin, and he would understand my viewpoint. But things did not go my way. We had just finished dinner, and Justin and I were in the twins' room to check up on them. 3 kids. We always planned for 2, but I'm not complaining. They're so cute. Yeah, they are. Well, I want to talk to you about something. Sure, what's on your mind? We need to secure all our kids' futures, you know. I know, I might be thinking too far ahead, but we can provide them with better opportunities. We can even help them with their college if they need it. You're right. If I continue with my job, we can save more. And if I work for a few more years, I'll likely get a raise. That would be amazing. But who will stay with the kids at home while we are working? What if you quit working and stay home to take care of the kids? What? Are you kidding me? No. You get along with them so well. What I mean is, I am the man of the house. Just because you have a higher-paying job does not make you the decision-maker. Justin, are you kidding me? Can't you see? We would have had a better life if I went to work instead. Seriously, is your ego that fragile that taking care of the kids makes you think you're less of a man? Justin looked really furious, something I had never expected. He raised his hand at me and slapped me right across my face. "How dare you say that to me? You're trying to be the boss, aren't you? Just stay within your limits. Do what you're asked to do, and more importantly, listen to me." Justin left the room, leaving me standing there in shock. It brought back memories of the past. I was utterly stunned. How could my husband, the father of my children, someone I thought was the love of my life, do this to me? I am not suggesting all men are the same, but there are some who are incredibly insecure about their masculinity. I was devastated to realize Justin was one of them. I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and most of all, fear. I was scared to be around Justin, unsure of what he might do if I made another wrong move. That night, I could not exactly sleep. I spent it on the couch, contemplating my options. I knew I needed to get out of this marriage, not just for my sake, but for the kids as well. I had been through a similar situation when I was young with my mom's husband, Paul. My dad had taught me well after that, showing me how a real man should treat women. Then one of the twins started crying on the baby monitor, and it hit me. We had the baby monitor in the twins' room, and it must have recorded everything that had happened. I had solid proof. The first thing I did was extract the footage, and I got what I needed. Then an idea began to form in my mind. I waited until morning, making sure Justin and the kids were still asleep. Then I made a call to my dad. "Good morning, Bunny. Hey, Dad, you're calling me so early today. Is everything all right?" "No, Dad. Something happened last night. I need help." "What, are you safe, honey? What happened?" "Yes, for now." "Well, last night Justin and I argued, and things got out of hand. He slapped me." "What? How dare he? Why did you wait all night to call me?" "I did not know what to do, Dad." "Sweetheart, remember what I have always said. I'm here for you whenever you need me. I mean it well." "Dad, the thing is, all of this happened while we were in the twins' room, and it got recorded on the baby monitor." "Bingo. We have proof. We're going to get that bastard. I know some people in law enforcement. Stay put. Where is Justin right now?" "He's still sleeping." "Why don't you send me that video and get the kids?" "I'm coming." I woke up Amanda and gathered the twins, hastily packing a bag for them. I forwarded the recording to my dad. Anxious, I waited in the living room. Just 15 minutes after the phone call, there was aggressive knocking on the door. As I approached the door, I could hear Justin coming down the stairs. "Who's at the door and why are the babies here? What's going on?" "Open the door. It's the police." "The police? Who called them here?" Justin rushed down the stairs, and as he did, I opened the door. The first person to enter the house was my dad, and he hugged me tightly. "Thank God, honey, you are safe." "I'm so sorry." "Thanks for being here." "Dad, you're under arrest for assaulting your wife. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, one will be provided for you." "Is this about last night? You've got this all wrong. It was just a big misunderstanding." The police officer handcuffed him. "Get these things off me." I said, "Oh, you're going to pay for this. I promise you, I will break your jaw if you ever speak to my daughter like that again. Consider yourself lucky that I did not handle this myself. Take him, officer." My dad drove me and the kids to his place. Both Justin and I hired attorneys, and there was a lot of courtroom drama. Surprisingly, Justin's criminal record included a bar fight where the other person ended up hospitalized for a month. I had no idea of this. As a result, Justin was sentenced to 3 months in jail. I sent him the divorce papers, and not only did I gain custody of my children, but Justin also did not receive any visitation rights. I had a lot to figure out, but my dad offered me a solution. You know, I am a retired man. If you like, we can take care of the kids here until you have something else going on for you. No pressure, Dad. That would mean a lot to me while I figure things out. Furthermore, I've met someone named Kathy. She brings me a lot of joy. Would you mind if she moved in here too? I had already asked her before all this happened, and I was going to inform you. But no, Dad, I'm more than pleased. I'm glad you found someone. You can return to work, and Kathy and I will look after the kids. Sounds perfect, Dad. It has been 6 months since we moved into my dad's house, and a lot has transpired during that time. Justin was released from jail, but did not attempt to contact me. I got back to work, I moved in, and met Kathy. She possesses wisdom and experience, and she's very affectionate. Surprisingly, she also provides me with motherly advice, and it feels like she fills a void. All my kids are healthy, and Amanda has started preschool. Honestly, I believe I might need more time to fully recover from everything. However, on the brightest side, I'm grateful for everything I have. For now, I am just concentrating on my work and my kids. It may take time to heal and grow, but surrounded by the love of my family, I know I will find my way. Mom struggles to get by on her pension. Shouldn't we, as someone who can still work, assist her? When the somewhat overweight, moderate son of Billy and his wife seriously talked to another child, Billy, about what would happen when an inheritance from their father, this led them all. It does not appear that his words were heard. What do you say? We cannot nymph over our money just because her single has a pension relating only. Exactly. Or perhaps our mother-in-law plans to just dip into our money. Suddenly, the eldest son and his wife looked at me with faces like they'd bitten into a bitter bug. It wasn't a look one should give to their parents. Stop trying to leech off us. It's a nuisance. The pensioner should just keep to herself, except for weddings and funerals. Stay out of our business. Hey, that's enough. Billy chided them, but I was looking down, clenching my fists. Not only do they wish for the death of my husband, but they also complained about the inheritance and then called me a parasite. I must have raised him wrong. I can't stand it anymore. Yet I told the eldest son and his wife very calmly, I understand what you're saying. Let's sever our ties. My name is Catherine. I will be turning 65 this year. I am currently living with my husband, who is retired. He is a kind and considerate person, and we have supported each other for a long time. We were blessed with 2 children, our oldest son Dan and our second son Billy. Both of them are now married. Recently, our house has been showing its age, so we were planning to renovate. We thought it would be nice if we could live with our oldest son and his wife, Dan and Rebecca, once the renovations are done. So I contacted Dan. We're planning to renovate soon. Would you consider moving in with us? When I said this over the phone, Dan clearly showed his reluctance. Living together, can you spare me? Rebecca will not like it either. But if we're going to renovate, I want to prepare a room for you guys too. That's for your convenience, right? If you have so much money that you can afford to renovate, then you can give us some of that money. I'll take it. From the phone, I could even hear Rebecca, Dan's wife, saying living together is seriously impossible. I see. Let's forget about this conversation. The eldest son and his wife are always like this. For some reason, they always act superior and display a cold attitude towards us. After I hung up the phone, I conveyed Dan and the others' feelings to my husband just as they were. My husband shot a somewhat lonely expression but spoke up cheerfully. Can't be helped for our old age. Let's just make the renovations for accessibility so we can live by ourselves. Following that, our home was remodeled as we wished and reborn as a house with barrier-free design. Several months after the renovation was completed, we were scheduled to have a meal with both our eldest son and his wife and our second son and his wife. First to arrive was our second son, Billy, and his wife, Anne. Anne is a thoughtful person. As soon as she handed me a hostess gift, she came to the kitchen to help me. "Mother-in-law, you are always so good at cooking." "Oh, thank you. I'm grateful for your help, Anne." As we were chatting, the eldest son and his wife arrived. Upon their arrival, they sat heavily on the sofa and demanded that tea be brought to them. Seeing me preparing it, Rebecca and Dan spoke in an irritated manner. Really, they have no consideration. "Exactly. We are guests here. Hurry up." As I was about to place the tea in front of them silently, Billy approached Dan from the side. "Dan, can't you do at least that much by yourself?" "You shut up." At Dan's intimidating words, I sighed. Billy and his wife are kind to us, but even towards such a Billy, Dan was overbearing. However, the reason we called these siblings this time was because there was an important matter to discuss. The dinner party started and Dan, who was eating in a grumpy manner, spoke up. "Hey, Dad, since you called us here, you must have some business, right? Spit it out." Indeed, my husband looked at me, so I gave a small nod. The truth is, it has been found that I have lung cancer. Billy and his wife showed genuinely surprised expressions. Both the eldest son and his wife's facial expressions didn't change much. "Dad, cancer. What's the current situation?" "I'm going to be hospitalized starting next week, but they told me the cancer has spread all over my body and I've got about 6 months left." "That can't be." "Well, dazzled anyway," Dan muttered as if it was someone else's business. Rebecca chimed in, "Well, you can't beat age, right?" My uncle quickly passed away from stomach cancer, too. Her thoughtless words irritated me, and I couldn't help but raise my voice. "Would you two just stop it?" "Catherine, it's fine." The father calms me down and begins to speak quietly, looking at his children. "I want you guys to look after your mother after I'm gone." "Of course, Dad. We'll take care of Mom, so don't worry." "Yes, please think about your own health, father-in-law." The second son and his wife answered firmly. However, the eldest son and his wife were both playing with their cell phones, not seeming to listen to their father's words at all. After finishing their meal, everyone started to leave. Since the eldest son and his wife left quickly, I went outside to see off the second son and his wife. "Mom, I know it's tough, but hang in there. We will also help. Of course, please let us know anything." "Thank you, Billy." With such conversation, I saw the second son and his wife off. My husband preferred palliative care over surgery and chemotherapy, so he was admitted to a hospice the following week. I started visiting the hospice almost every day, and the second son and his wife would drive me and help take care of him. However, no matter how much I called, the eldest son and his wife never visited. Then about 5 months later, my husband's condition worsened, and I called the eldest son and his wife, telling them this might be the end. They appeared reluctantly. However, Dan neither held his hand nor said a word to him. Instead, they only gawked at my frail husband as if he were some repulsive sight. We've shown our faces. Isn't that enough? We have things to take care of, so we'll be going now. The elder couple left the hospital room abruptly, not even 10 minutes after their arrival. As soon as they left the room, I noticed Rebecca had gotten her jacket. I quickly rushed after them. As I approached the staircase leading to the hallway, I saw them slowly descending the stairs. The two were so engrossed in their conversation that they didn't notice me. It really seems like Dad's time is coming home. Hey, what's going to happen to the inheritance with father-in-law gone? Dan smiled and Rebecca's question followed. Dad was just a regular employee, but Mom and the rest have been living pretty comfortably lately, haven't they? Maybe they've been playing the stock market or something. We could probably expect a decent inheritance. Haha. Oh, I can't wait. I've been wanting to go on an overseas trip. I also want to design her handbag. All we can do now is wait for things to wrap up. I teared up listening to their conversation. I couldn't possibly tell my husband about this. Unable to confront them, I silently returned to the hospital room. 2 weeks later, he passed away. I kept for a long time by his side, but Billy and his wife were there comforting me. Thanks to their support, I was able to hold it together, and the funeral went without a hitch. As soon as the funeral was over and only family remained, Dan, unable to contain his impatience, brought up the topic about Dad's inheritance. What the hell, Dan? We just had the funeral today. Billy immediately reprimanded him, but Dan only glared back. You, the second son, just shut up. With this, I spoke up. We'll arrange a meeting to discuss the inheritance next week. For today, please just go home. At these words, the elder couple grunted and promptly left. The following week, the cheerful elder couple and the serious younger couple arrived at our home for the inheritance meeting. I told the two couples in front of me, first off, I should mention that your father's inheritance amounts to about $30,000. What? As I broke the news, Dan looked flabbergasted. I'd like to split this as per legal inheritance shares, with me taking half and each of you getting a quarter. Wait, hold on. Are you sure there's only $30,000? In response to my matter-of-fact tone, Dan persisted. I passed him a thick envelope. All the documents are in here. Please check them. After looking through the documents, Dan and Rebecca's faces were contorted in frustration. Damn, Dad was really strapped, huh? So we're only getting $7,500 each. That's too little. If it's this low, give us the house too. At the clearly dissatisfied couple, Billy responded in an angry tone. Our mother is still living in that house. Don't care. It's because you wasted money on renovations that we're left with nothing. That's right. If the inheritance is this small, give us the house too. I calmly told the irritated couple, this house was painstakingly renovated by her father so we could live here in our old age. I won't just hand it over. I'll keep it as long as I live. What? It's not fair for you to keep everything to yourself. Dan glared at me with a fury that seemed as if he was about to lunge at me. Dan, cool it. Billy restrained Dan. Your father was worried about me till the end. You might not understand it, Dan. Billy started speaking softly while looking at me, who was still stirred up. Mom, we're going to announce our inheritance. You should take our part too. Dad would rest easy knowing that. He and his wife nodded beside him. Billy, there's no need to worry. As I said that, Dan and Rebecca interjected again. If they don't want to give their part to us, yes, we'll gladly take it. That's impossible. Mom's living on her pension. It's tough. We who are working should help her. Billy sincerely scolded his older brother and his wife, but his words didn't seem to affect them at all. Wouldn't you say support? Just because she's only got her pension doesn't mean we can just give our money away. Exactly. Or perhaps mother-in-law was planning to siphon off our money from the beginning. The older couple looked at me with an expression as if they had just chewed on a bitter bug. Their eyes were not the kind one should direct at a parent. Stop behaving like a parasite. It's a nuisance. Old ladies living on pensions should keep out of everything except for weddings and funerals. Just stay quiet. Hey, stop it now. Billy scolded them, but I had my head down and was clenching my fists. Not only did they wish for my husband's death, but they also complained about the inheritance and even called me a parasite. I wondered where I had gone wrong in raising him. Tears welled up in my eyes with regrets, but I couldn't lose my composure here. I gathered my feelings and said very calmly to Dan and Rebecca, "I understand what you're saying. Let's sever our ties." When I said that, the older couple looked surprised for a moment, but quickly broke into a smirk. "Really? That's the best news I've heard. Does this mean we don't have to deal with the old lady anymore? Lucky." As Dan and Rebecca hurried to leave, they sarcastically called out to Billy and his wife, "So there you have it. You guys look after the old lady. Good luck taking care of the parasite." As the couple stormed out, Billy and his wife rushed over to me. "Mom, are you okay? They're just too awful. Mother-in-law, we are always by your side. Please don't be upset." I was still looking down, but I raised my face and looked straight at the two of them. "Billy and I have something to tell you." A few months later, while I was relaxing at home, Dan and Rebecca appeared with Billy. "What's going on? We severed our ties, haven't we? Hey, old lady, we need to talk." "Indeed. Come on in." The eldest son and his wife, shouting at the entrance, their faces flushed red. From the side, Billy spoke with an apologetic tone. "Sorry, Mom. I was asked about the house, and I couldn't help but tell them." "That's fine for now. Everyone, please come in." I let them into the house. The moment they were led into the living room, the eldest couple began to raise their voices. "What do you mean you're giving the house to Bill?" "Exactly. You're disregarding us." The eldest couple, "What's that all about?" Looking at the two of them, I spoke in a calm and composed manner. "Billy said he would maintain the house and preserve your father's memories. That's why I decided to leave it to him." "What? What do you mean?" Dan stared at me, taken aback. "Billy and his wife Anne have been a great support to me. It's only natural." I smiled warmly at the apologetic-looking younger couple. "Thank you, Mom. We're not here to hear that you said you'd take over the house yourself, didn't you?" After taking a quick glance at the eldest daughter-in-law, who looked like she was about to froth at the mouth, I explained, "I thought I'd hand it over to someone who would respect your father and my wishes. Besides, I started getting some rental income." "What? What is this?" Seeing my surprise, I set it aside and continued matter-of-factly. "Remember how last year my father, your grandfather, passed away? Billy attended the funeral, but you couldn't because you were out of town. Remember that?" "That was." I continued, "Your grandfather was a landlord who owned several buildings and apartments. Finally, the inheritance has been settled, and I've started receiving rental income." The eldest couple's faces looked as if they had been hit by a bolt from the blue. We never heard anything about that. I never mentioned it." "Hey, about that rental income, how much are we talking about?" "Well, it's about $3 million a year. So it's easy for me to give one of the houses to my adorable son and his wife." Then Dan and Rebecca, the eldest couple, sprang to their feet energetically. "Wait, hold on a minute. If Billy and his wife get one, then we should. Why should I split my assets with someone who called me a parasite? Wasn't it you who told me to stay away?" "Whoa, that's..." "If you're going to call me a parasite, then please don't leech off me." My sharp words made Dan and Rebecca begin to stutter in response. I glared at them both and pointed to the door. "All right, the conversation is over. Please go home now." "Wait, hold on, Mom. Please listen to me." Dina approached me flustered and suddenly clung to my arm. I looked at her with a cold gaze. "You have no right to call me Mom. Please, you can give us some of the house and money, too. We're struggling, The eldest daughter-in-law pleaded loudly. I looked at them and spoke, struggling. What do you mean? Dan then started to explain hesitantly. We thought we'd get Dad's inheritance and lived a bit too luxuriously. And well, we kind of got into debt. I forcefully shook off Dan's arm. I'm disgusted. I didn't think you could be this stupid. This is the bed you've made, so you need to lie in it. Mom, that's just too cruel. I had the final say to the upset faces of the eldest couple. From now on, I'll transfer my assets to Billy while I'm still alive. I won't give a penny to you who cut ties with me. Please never bother us again. Billy stood up to the crestfallen eldest couple. If you understand, then go home quickly. Don't come near Mom or us ever again. Billy showed the deflated two out the door. He was rubbing my back, which was still breathing heavily. After that, the eldest couple apparently ended up going bankrupt after getting into debt to repay their existing debt from their rundown apartment. It said you could hear Dan and Rebecca arguing night after night. For them, who couldn't manage this simple act of cherishing their family, a decent future probably isn't in the cards. As for me, since I passed the house on to Billy, I bought and moved into an apartment nearby that comes with caregiving services. Billy and his wife often come by to visit, and they've recently had an adorable baby. I want to continue building a good relationship with Billy's family and cherish each and every day. Mama, look over there. As we drove home from my mom's house, my daughter asked. There was literally a mountain of trash bags in front of our doorstep. It dawned on me that the stuff in these bags was our personal items or whatever, and they were packed so haphazardly like garbage. Upon seeing the figure, I shouted, "What is this? Why is this happening?" In one of the bags, my daughter tearfully removed her favorite stuffed animal and grabbed hold. Frustrated, I marched towards the entrance, only to find the locks had been changed while we were out. It was clear my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were behind this. Ringing the doorbell and knocking several times brought no response. What is this? Isn't it terrible? I muttered. Upon closer inspection, one of the trash bags had a note that read, "Parasites disappear. Never come back." Anger surged within me, and I couldn't help but express my frustration aloud. The real parasites are you. This was the worst treatment I had ever received from my in-laws in 17 years. It was unbearable that they were making my daughter feel this way too. My patience exhausted and boiling with anger, I loaded our belongings into the car, and we returned to my parents' house. I will never come back to this house again, I declared. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens to the parasites when their host is gone. My name is Olivia. I am currently 45 years old. I live with my husband, daughter, and my husband's mother and sister. I can't say we live happily. I work from home, but this house is never peaceful. The issue lies with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, Hannah. They have disliked and ignored me for over 12 years. As my daughter Megan grew up, it bothered me less and less. I mainly work as a personal consultant. I started as a fortune teller, but as my blog became popular, I began getting more questions about attracting customers. This led to my current job. I met my husband Jake through a friend's introduction when I was training to be a fortune teller. I work in sales at a pharmaceutical company and also do affiliate marketing as a side job, which is finally starting to take off. Jake gave me great advice on attracting customers when I struggled with fortune telling. Attracted by his kindness, we started dating and got married a year later. Our income wasn't great at that time, but Jake always supported me. I'm so glad I married Jake. I truly felt this way. Living with my in-laws started about a year after we got married. It began when my father-in-law, who had been healthy, suddenly passed away. My mother-in-law felt insecure about the future and asked my husband to live with us. We agreed to live together in exchange for taking care of the household chores. At first, my mother-in-law welcomed us and was happy. I hoped we would get along well, but I was wrong. 4 months later, she began completely ignoring me, maybe because she was unhappy that I wasn't helping with the housework. Soon, my sister-in-law, Hannah, also started ignoring me. I didn't mind being ignored, but my mother-in-law's tendency to involve others was challenging. Not only did Hannah hear about it, but even neighbors and relatives were informed that my daughter-in-law stays at home, but says she's working, leaving all the housework to me. If I stayed even a little, she would talk back 100-fold, so I just ignored her. To make matters worse, my mother-in-law would suggest to others, "You better not talk to her too. It'll be troublesome." As a result, people around the in-law house began giving me only cold responses to my greetings. I felt isolated, and it became very difficult. Despite my pleas to stop spreading strange rumors, my words were completely ignored. Although my mother-in-law's attitude softened slightly when my daughter Megan was born 3 years after we started living together, her overall stance towards me hardly changed. However, she was very fond of Megan, and having her help with household chores and childcare was a huge relief as my work became busier. Around the same time, my husband Jake's side business started to struggle, and he seemed unable to adapt to changes in the affiliate marketing market. He approached me saying, "Olivia, can you increase your contribution to the monthly expenses a bit?" I agreed and mentioned that my consultations were increasing and my new methods were working well. Even though I was willing to help boost his sales, Jake insisted on handling it alone, saying, "I think I'll try it on my own." I'm really sorry. From the start of our marriage, we agreed that Jake would manage the household finances. At first, my income was low, so he allowed me to contribute more when my sales increased. I would transfer money to Jake based on my monthly earnings, and he would give me a fixed amount for living expenses in cash. Initially, I could only contribute $300, but now I could transfer up to $3,000, though not every month. I could contribute more if I went into savings. I knew Jake was struggling with his side business, but his pride kept him from asking for my help. He started spending more time at caves after work, coming home later and later. When Megan was about 5, Hannah got married and moved out. Since she lived nearby, she often brought her son Frank to our house during the day. When Frank turned 1, Hannah said she wanted to start a part-time job, and my mother-in-law happily offered to take care of him until the evening. Hannah was grateful, saying, "Thank you. I'm so happy." As my mother-in-law started caring for Frank at home, she became very fond of him and began being cold towards Megan. When they fought, my mother-in-law would scold Megan and compare her unfavorably to Frank. Over time, Megan started playing near me and began to dislike my mother-in-law's behavior. I spoke up, saying, "Talk to your mother. Megan and Frank are both her grandchildren. She should treat them the same. Megan is already a big sister in elementary school." However, my mother-in-law's focus shifted, and she approached me, saying, "Things are tough at the company right now. We might not get bonuses, so could you contribute a bit more?" Despite the challenges, my blog's client attraction was successful, and I started receiving more consultations as a consultant, earning far more than I did as a fortune teller. When Jake asked for additional financial support, I responded, "I'm already contributing $4,000 a month. Isn't that enough?" Yeah, I'm embarrassed to say, but my salary has decreased, and the side business isn't going well. "Don't be secretive," I said. "We are a couple. We should support each other in tough times. I'm really ashamed. Thank you." Later, the amount I contributed gradually increased, and eventually I was transferring $5,000 a month to Jake. Still not wanting to hurt his pride, I let Jake continue to manage the finances. When Megan was in 7th grade, Hannah came back home with Frank. It seems Hannah got divorced due to her infidelity, but I don't know the details. By this time, Megan could help around the house, so household chores were divided among each family member. Being ignored by my mother-in-law and Hannah continued, but it no longer bothered me. It's unfortunate that I couldn't give Megan her own room when she started middle school, as Hannah's return meant we ran out of rooms. One night, while discussing which tutoring school Megan should attend for middle school, Hannah suddenly said, "Hey, tutoring is expensive. Why doesn't Megan study by herself? Could you stop making such comments? I'm paying for the tutoring, so it's none of your business what Olivia is paying." "Impossible. You don't earn anything. Jake said he's supporting you. You're just a leech, aren't you? Haha, you married him because he has money, right?" "Exactly. Jake told me not to speak ill of Olivia, but that's just shameless." My mind was filled with questions. What does this mean? What has Jake been telling his mother and the others? Jake is the one supporting this house financially. It's about time we put an end to the parasite's lifestyle. I feel bad for Megan, but if we pay for her tutoring, we won't be able to pay my compensation. Not able to pay. Are you saying our house is paying for your compensation, Hannah? Jake said he would pay for it. You should spend your money on Frank. I began to understand the deception and felt my anger rising. My husband had always managed our household finances, and my mother-in-law had taken care of the household chores and childcare until Megan grew up. So I thought they knew I was also contributing to the household expenses. Is Jake bearing all the expenses of this house, including your living expenses and the compensation Hannah is supposed to pay? Be quiet. It's only natural for a family. You're the only outsider here, not related by blood, and yet you act as if living here is your right. It really makes me angry. I contribute money too. Don't talk back. What you contribute is barely enough for your own food expenses. You hardly have any income, and yet you're so arrogant. I could feel my body trembling with anger. I could see Megan on the side, looking like she might cry. I knew Jake had a lot of pride, but I never thought it would be this bad. In the beginning, Jake was paying for the living expenses and pocket money for my mother-in-law and Hannah, but I had started contributing as well. Now we were living on my income. I needed to talk to Jake properly. Around midnight, Jake came home. He was drunk and seemed cheerful. "Can we talk? I didn't know you weren't getting any money from your mother or Hannah. They said you're covering all the expenses of this house." "Oh, about that, my bad. It's a matter of pride as a man, you know. When we started living together, I was paying for everything. There wasn't a right moment to say you were also paying. And in front of the family, let me be the eldest son a little, please." Jake, with a light-hearted tone like in a comedy sketch, put his hands together. "Oh, that's right. I'm going to Faye this Saturday. I'll be gone for a week." "Take care. Faye, why?" "I got invited to a deal in Faye by a friend I'm doing a side business with. I'm going to make it a success, so cheer for me, Olivia." "Well, I'm off to sleep. See you tomorrow." My husband laid down on the mat in a cheerful mood and soon started snoring. My anger wouldn't subside, but recently, with Jake coming home late, we hadn't talked much, and I had no idea about this. I thought he was joking while drunk, but on the weekend, Jake really left with a large suitcase during Jake's absence. I had the freedom to use the car, so I decided to take Megan back to my parents' house. The next day, a shocking event awaited us. "Mom, what is that?" When Megan and I returned to my parents' house, there were piles of trash bags in front of the entrance. Upon closer inspection, these bags contained mine and Megan's belongings, carelessly packed like real trash. What is this? Why is this happening? I don't understand. Megan, crying, pulled out her beloved stuffed animal from the bag and hugged it. Furious, I headed towards the entrance. Had the locks changed? It seemed that the locks had been changed while we were out. This must be the work of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, Hannah. I rang the doorbell and knocked several times, but no one came out. What is this? Isn't it terrible? Upon closer inspection, one of the trash bags had a note saying, "Parasites disappear. Never come back." I felt a surge of anger from the bottom of my heart. The real parasites are you. I couldn't help but let out a swear word. This was the worst treatment I had ever received from my in-laws in 17 years. They weren't just hurting me, but also making my daughter feel this way. I finally lost my patience. Boiling with anger, I loaded the luggage into the car, and we returned to my parents' house. I will never come back to this house again. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens to the parasites when their host is gone. When we returned to my parents' house, they were shocked. I hadn't told them about being ignored by my in-laws, the money issues, or their attitude towards Megan, not wanting to worry them. My parents said, "There's no need to go back to that house. You should claim compensation from them." They cried with anger and told me to stay with them. My mother's words, "You really had it tough," made me cry too. In reality, I had been trying my best all this time. Enough is enough. I finally decided to confront my feelings. While staying at my parents' house, I contacted a friend who had introduced me to Jake. She was connected to Jake's side business friends. "Are you doing well? I want to ask you something. Do you know if Jake's friends are currently in Fade, that famous entrepreneur pedo, right?" I was invited but wasn't interested, so I declined. Jake didn't go, did he? Yeah, that's right. By the way, I heard Jake quit his job and is now managing a business with his wife. You two must be close. Ah, yes, that's right, I replied nonchalantly and hung up. Immediately after, I called Jake's company. What my friend said was true, and to my surprise, Jake had quit his job 3 years ago. This meant that for the past 3 years, I had been paying almost all of the living expenses for my in-laws. Looking back over the years, I suddenly felt hollow. A week later, I received a laid-back message from Jake saying he was back in the USA. After continuously ignoring him, I stopped hearing from him altogether. He must have heard the news back home. Expecting persistent contact from Jake, I hired a detective to investigate him. The investigation revealed that Jake, dressed in a suit in the morning, spent his afternoons gambling and evenings at a woman's house. So I asked for an investigation into his infidelity as well. 2 weeks later, Jake called me. It must have been close to his former company's payday, and he was panicking. "Olivia, sorry I couldn't contact you. I'm sorry for what my family did. I heard they kicked you out, and I was thinking, why did it come to this? Really, did you tell the truth to your mother and Hannah?" Jake quickly changed the subject and said something unbelievable. "Let's leave that house and live in a new home, just the 3 of us. I'll cut ties with those who disregard you, Olivia. I'm ready to abandon my mother and Hannah, so please come back." Are you really cutting ties with your mother and Hannah? I was disappointed in Jake and his self-centered actions, so I told him I'm coming back for now, so leave the door unlocked. Jake seemed delayed in responding to my message. A few days later, I returned to my in-laws' house with Megan. Jake, his mother, and Hannah were there, but Frank was nowhere to be seen. I was relieved that Frank didn't have to witness the adults' ugly arguments. When Jake made some remarks, I ignored the displeased pair and took out a divorce form from my bag. I confronted the surprised Jake. "I heard you quit your job without telling me. Since we're supposedly managing a business together, does that mean the $5,000 I've been transferring every month was actually your salary?" Jake tried to excuse himself. "No, that's not it. I told you the business was in trouble, right? So I decided to quit before getting fired." "Really? I heard you quit 3 years ago, right? I called your company, and it's still not bankrupt." Jake fell silent. I pressed further. "By the way, what role do you play in our joint business management? Are you an accountant?" Jake became increasingly uneasy and started sweating. "Jake is supporting the whole family, isn't he, Mother? He quit his job. His side business isn't going well, and yet it's a mystery where the money is coming from. I'm leaving, but please continue to get financial support from Jake." My mother-in-law and Hannah's faces turned pale. "But the other day on the phone, you were crying and begging to save only yourself, saying you'd cut ties with your mother and sister. Haha, but that won't happen. I'm also discarding Jake here." "What do you mean? I don't understand." "Jake hasn't been going to work." "That's a lie. He leaves in a suit." "And Olivia was supporting the household." "It's true. Olivia has been paying for everything for years. I'm unemployed now and not doing any side business. We're going to have a hard life because you kicked Olivia out. We could have had an easy life without working if you hadn't done anything unnecessary." "What do you mean by that? You were planning to abandon us, weren't you?" Jake's response made my mother-in-law and Hannah furious, and they started arguing. While they caused a commotion, Megan and I began to take action. I came to pick up some forgotten items. I took a cleaning robot bought within the last 5 months, an expensive microwave favored by my mother-in-law, and the beauty device Hannah had gotten from Jake. "Wait, that's mine." "This is mine since I bought it with my money, or you can pay me back for it." Hannah fell silent at my words. Then I searched for and gathered my belongings from their rooms. The items they had put out did not include my expensive brand bags and accessories. "Why are you taking that too?" "This is mine." I ignored their complaints and sweet talk. Finally, I dropped a bombshell on Jake. "Oh, I forgot. I plan to claim compensation from your mistress, Lauren. Tell her it's no use running away." "What? How do you know about her?" "I know you went to Faye with Lauren recently." "Good for you, right? Of course, I have all the evidence of the affair, so no escaping that." "No way. You've been deceiving me and having fun for the past 3 years. I'll be claiming compensation for the affair, child support for Megan, and oh, you were secretly paying Hannah's compensation too. I'll be claiming that back as well." As I prepared to leave, my mother-in-law and Hannah desperately tried to stop me. "I was wrong, Olivia. I'm sorry. We just believed what Jake said. We can't live without you. We'll do anything. Please help us. I can't pay you back for the compensation. I'm sorry too. I apologize for everything. You'll forgive us, right?" I couldn't help but laugh at their foolish faces. They finally realized who had been supporting their lifestyle, realizing too late that their non-blood-related support was gone. "Let's just ignore these people, Mom. Let's go home." "Yes, that's right. Jake, you'll be hearing from the lawyer soon. Please take care of it." Leaving a dejected Jake behind, we returned home with the items we had collected. Later, my divorce with Jake was finalized, and I demanded compensation through a lawyer. I received many apologies and pleas for reconciliation from my mother-in-law and Hannah, but I ignored them all. Surprisingly, there was still some inheritance left from Jake's father. The fact that they had been living off my money without using their own made me angry again. However, the inheritance wasn't enough for the compensation, and ultimately they had to sell the house to make a lump sum payment. Naturally, this included the compensation I had been paying for Hannah. After selling the house, I don't know what became of Jake's family. I hope Jake can take care of his family, but ultimately he will choose his own path. I'd also claimed compensation from Jake's mistress, which led to an unexpected revelation. Through the lawyer, I informed her that Jake was unemployed and I had been supporting the family. Jake had deceived her, claiming he was an entrepreneur with a successful business. They broke up after an argument. Megan and I moved to an apartment, and I was able to give her the room she had longed for. I don't think my 17 years were wasted, but sometimes I wonder if I should have made a decision when I started being ignored. Now I feel happy that my home is a peaceful place. I'm also so exhausted mentally and physically from the stress of raising a child. That's why I need Michael's support so badly. I tried my best to persuade Michael to stay. I'm also enduring Thea's crying every night. Plus, I'm nearing my mental limit from exhaustion. Raising a child has traditionally been a mother's job, right? Regardless of what I do, it's none of your business, Michael said, showing slight irritation. Are you serious? How can you plan a vacation to Mexico with your sisters at a time like this? I'm just going to leave my family and wife for a short while and have some fun. Saying that, Michael grabbed his bag with a grin and hurriedly left the house. I wanted to follow him, but I could hear Thea crying from inside the room, so I couldn't move. Tears wouldn't stop flowing as I tried to process my feelings. I didn't work so hard to support a man like this. I dreamed of building a good life together as a couple. However, Michael showed no willingness to work. Moreover, he took my gold card without permission and used it without hesitation. I've reached my limit with this manipulative man. I hardened my heart and began to plan my revenge on Michael. My name is Susan Diane. I am turning 30 this year. I started my career as a new employee in a major, well-known company. I've been working there since my younger days and have continued to work hard. One day, on my way home from work, feeling tired, I stopped by a bar. There I met my current husband, Michael. He was working as a bartender behind the counter. Michael is 28, 6 years younger than me. He has a very attractive face and a friendly personality. He was someone I could easily talk to about work concerns or just chat. Gradually, visiting that bar became a part of my daily routine. Our relationship developed, and we started living together as a couple. My family was initially not in favor of my relationship with Michael. Many suggested dating men from my workplace, but my feelings for Michael were unwavering. I firmly believed in our future together. In the early days of our marriage, he played an active role in our household. Since his bartending shift started in the evening, he supported our home during the day. Susan, you must be tired from work, so I'll prepare dinner tonight. These words showed his consideration towards me. When I came home, dishes prepared by Michael were laid out on the table, and I felt grateful almost every day, thinking marrying him was the right choice. However, a few months after our marriage, I noticed a subtle change in Michael's attitude. It seemed related to my salary. One evening, when I came home, my salary slip was spread out on the living room table. Sitting in front of it, he was tracing the figures on the slip with a look of surprise. I never thought Susan would be earning this much. He looked up at me, clearly taken aback. In fact, I hadn't specifically informed Michael about the exact amount of my income since our marriage. Even if I worked standing all day, I couldn't earn this much. Susan really works hard. He tilted his head, deep in thought, and spoke to me with a hint of regret in his eyes. A few days later, as we dined together, Michael suddenly blurted out, "Actually, I quit my job today." What? Why? I was so shocked by his words that I dropped my fork. I've been thinking, just with my salary, it might be tough for both of us to live comfortably. So I decided I'll handle everything at home, and we'll live off your income. That way, you can focus even more on your work. But how can we manage with only one income? My voice trembled as I spoke. In truth, I hadn't been feeling well since the morning, so during my lunch break, I bought a pregnancy test at a nearby pharmacy. The result was positive, and I decided to share this astonishing news with Michael tonight. "Michael, it seems like we're going to have a baby." "Really? Are you serious?" His face was filled with surprise, and he seemed at a loss for words for a moment. "I took a test today. If I end up taking maternity leave, I might be a bit worried about you quitting your job." I honestly expressed my concerns to Michael. In response, Michael said, "But the company you work for pays a full salary even during maternity leave, right?" I was a bit taken aback by his words. That's true, but my mind was swirling with emotions, and I didn't know what to do. It seemed Michael was more concerned about my salary during maternity leave than the fact I was pregnant. He said he intended to take on all the household responsibilities, and he expected me to focus on earning a salary. At first glance, it sounded like he was thinking of my best interests, but I was left with a lingering unease. I was aware of the significant difference between my income and Michael's, but I hadn't anticipated relying solely on my salary for our household expenses. I could feel my anxieties about the future and my doubts about him growing day by day. According to a recent doctor's diagnosis, our child was indeed growing inside me. Despite the changes in my condition during the early stages of pregnancy, I focused on my work. On the other hand, I felt that Michael was neglecting his responsibilities at home more than before. The way he spent time at home seemed to be changing drastically. His tendency to shirk responsibilities became increasingly evident, and every time I returned from work, the house seemed more and more in disarray. When I lived in the kitchen, I saw a pile of dishes left unwashed. "Oh, you're back." Michael, lounging on the living room sofa, didn't do anything in particular when he saw me. He was engrossed in using his smartphone. "What are we doing for dinner tonight?" "Actually, I went to a large local bathhouse today and had a meal there." "I'm sorry, but could you heat up some frozen food for tonight?" He said this while lightly pointing towards the refrigerator. That day, I was honestly exhausted and hungry, and I didn't feel like arguing with him, so I relied on the frozen food he pointed out. Time passed, and I started my maternity leave. As I spent more time at home, I began to notice more pronounced changes in Michael's behavior. Even when I kindly asked him to take on household chores more often, Michael immediately retorted, "Since you are at home now, do it. It's not fair for me to always be the one doing everything." He became upset and left the house. Conflicts like this occurred frequently, making our marital relationship increasingly strained. However, the silver lining was that the baby in my belly was growing healthily without any issues. Time went on, and I eventually gave birth. I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. We named her Thea. I decided not to return to my parents' home for the birth and chose to welcome her here. To support that decision, my mother came to our apartment and helped with our daily life. I have an older sister by 2 years named Maran. She had already married a man named Vince and had started their new life together. Maran and her husband Vince hadn't been blessed with children yet, and Maran was a full-time housewife. One day, Maran visited our apartment by herself. She carried a large bag with her. "Susan, congratulations on your baby's birth." She celebrated the birth of my lively daughter and brought warm gifts for her. "She's truly adorable." She gently hugged Thea, looking at her with a joyful expression. I noticed Michael watching the scene from a corner with a smile. I felt a certain unease for some reason. My sister Moran was always cheerful, and with her beauty and charm, she attracted the attention of many men. Whenever Moran visited our home, I noticed Michael hovering around her. "Hey, doesn't it feel exceptionally hot today? My mouth is getting dry." Reacting to Moran's words, Michael quickly headed to the kitchen, took out some juice from the fridge, and started pouring it into a beautiful glass. He added ice and made a refreshing drink just for her. "Moran, here you go. I've prepared a cold juice for you." "Well, thank you, Michael. I wish my husband would be as thoughtful as you." Moran finished the juice in no time. Michael watched her with a smile and kept buzzing around her. Since Thea's birth, I noticed that Moran visited more often, and every time, Michael and Moran seemed to enjoy lively conversations together. On the other hand, I was overwhelmed by taking care of Thea and felt exhausted every day. These night cries, in particular, were tough, leading to many sleepless nights for me. Due to this lack of sleep and stress, Michael started to get irritated by Thea's prolonged night cries. "I can't take it anymore. If this keeps up, I might lose my mind in this house." I couldn't contain myself after hearing that and exploded. "If you don't like it here so much, why don't you find a job outside? You barely help around the house, and you don't take care of Thea at all." Michael shrugged his shoulders. "Isn't the income during your maternity leave enough to sustain our current lifestyle? Do I really need to hustle and work outside?" His eyes calmly yet sharply stared at me. From that gaze, I strongly felt that he had no intention to look for work. I couldn't believe he thought that way. Can you even imagine how much it's going to cost to raise Thea? I can't forgive a father who just skips housework and hangs out all the time. But Michael wasn't fazed by my words and began walking towards the entrance. "Wait, Michael, where are you going?" Michael quickly put on his shoes. "I'm going to Moran's house," he replied in a low voice. I was taken aback. I couldn't believe he was heading to Moran's house because of our fight. Late into the night, I received a message on my phone from Michael. He wrote that he intended to spend that night at Moran's house. Concerned, I called Moran, and she lightly laughed, saying, "It's okay. Small spats between spouses are normal." The next day, when Michael returned home, he seemed to be organizing his things. As I approached to ask him, he said, "I'm packing for a trip." I was taken aback and exclaimed, "A trip?" My mind was in turmoil, unsure how to react. I've been really stressed these past few days, and when I confided in Moran, she suggested a short getaway. So we planned a trip all of a sudden. "But where are you planning to go?" "To Mexico. I'm looking forward to delicious barbecue and various dishes. It's going to be a short stay of 2 nights and 3 days. I was bewildered by this and couldn't gather my thoughts. "Wait, just the 2 of you?" I asked, feeling a rush of anxiety. "Don't worry, Vince is also joining. It's not just the 2 of us," he replied with a light chuckle. "But I'm exhausted from taking care of Thea and emotionally drained. I need your help and support now more than ever." I desperately conveyed my feelings to Michael. Honestly, enduring Thea's cries every night is tough for me. And isn't it mainly the mother's role to raise the child? I can't believe you think like that. Going on a trip to Mexico with Moran and the others when things are so tough here. I'm going to refresh myself. It's important to have some personal time, even if it means leaving the family for a bit," Michael said with a smug smile, gazing coldly into my eyes. Shortly after, as he hurriedly left the room, his luggage for this short trip was set by his feet. I wanted to chase after him and talk, but I could hear Thea's pitiful cries from deep within the room, so I had no choice but to stay put. I quickly tried to contact Moran, looked for her contact information, and called her using my smartphone. "Oh, I'm sorry I didn't mention this earlier, but I truly believe that taking a break is absolutely essential when things get mentally tough. So I searched for flight tickets and found some available seats to Mexico at just the right time. Vince can also take a short break, so even though it was a last-minute decision, we're going to Mexico. Oh, and my taxi is almost here, so I have to hang up now. Wait, Maran, why would you? Before I could finish my sentence, the call was disconnected. I was in shock for a moment, then began to wonder about something. Michael shouldn't really have any disposable income. How was he affording this trip to Mexico? Consumed by anxiety, I opened my wallet to check its contents. Oh no, my gold card provided by my company as an employee benefit, with all charges covered by the company, was missing. I hurriedly tried to contact Michael on his phone. Michael, you haven't taken and used my gold card without permission, have you? Actually, I borrowed it for a bit while you were in the bathroom. Right now, I'm at the exclusive Gold Card member lounge at the airport, about to enjoy some premium champagne with everyone. His reply was astonishingly calm, as if nothing was amiss. Taking my card without asking is utterly unacceptable, no matter how you look at it. I raised my voice, trembling with anger. Don't be ridiculous. We've always relied on your income to support the household. Using the gold card a little doesn't change our usual lifestyle. You're overreacting. Anyway, I'll enjoy my time here. He hung up abruptly. I was utterly devastated. Meanwhile, Thea had started crying again in the next room, as if expressing her loneliness. Looking around the living room, I saw evidence of a life left in disarray, with items scattered everywhere and signs that cleaning had been abruptly stopped. Every day, I was swamped with taking care of Thea and household chores. Despite me being at my limit, Michael casually decided to take a trip to Mexico with Moran and the others. I couldn't believe what was happening. Tears streamed down my face from the anger and frustration. Then it dawned on me, I need to freeze my card. I immediately began searching for the contact details of the credit card company, but as I searched, I gradually calmed down and had an idea. What if I let him use the card on purpose for 2 days, and at the moment when he'd be in the biggest pinch, I would freeze the card? 3 days have passed since Michael and the others left for Mexico. That's when I decided to contact the card company. I requested them to temporarily freeze my gold card. Shortly after, I received a call from Michael. From his voice, I could sense that something unexpected had happened. Apparently, they were on their way to the airport with plenty of time after checking out of the hotel. Actually, we were relaxing in the special Gold Card member lounge at the Mexican airport, but suddenly we were stopped by security staff, and without any explanation, we were kicked out of the lounge. Do you have any idea what's happening? His voice was filled with confusion and anxiety. I see. But think about it, Michael. You aren't officially a Gold Card member to begin with, so isn't it only natural that you were asked to leave the lounge? I conveyed the situation calmly and clearly. Did you have something to do with the card not working? He asked, his voice a mix of shock and suspicion. Yes, I did. I responded briefly but assertively. I can't believe this. Right now, I'm being escorted to the airport security room. I'm being taken away by a security guard, he described, his voice shaking as he spoke. Well, you should have known that there would be problems using a card that it isn't in your name, right? I replied with utmost calmness. I never thought it would come to this. What if I can't return to the U.S. now? His voice was full of anxiety and impatience. I could visualize his belongings and wallet being thoroughly inspected. I couldn't help but smile imagining his situation. According to him, Moran and Vince were also being interrogated in separate rooms. Even more shockingly, the entire travel expenses for Moran and the others were also charged using my gold card. I was taken aback by this startling revelation. A little later, I received a call from Moran. "Susan, what were you thinking? We are currently being interrogated at the Mexican airport." Her voice was filled with anger. "Moran, I genuinely had no idea. I never imagined that you all would use my gold card to pay for the trip." Michael came to our house, desperately seeking help. Vince and I planned this trip to Mexico to distract him. Since we joined as his support, we thought it was only natural for you, as his wife, to cover the expenses. I was at a loss for words. I was shocked that Moran saw this as a given. It seems that Moran also used my card for shopping and dining while abroad. "Susan, to resolve the issue, please lift the card suspension immediately." "It's not that simple." Moran showed clear anger at my response and said, "What's with that attitude? You've always been this plain and inconspicuous person, and yet you managed to establish a family and have a child before me. Just lift the card suspension without any complaints. Despite being engrossed in your job all the time, your salary must be high, right? And you must have a lot of savings too, don't you?" Her harsh words deeply wounded my heart. Her words dripped with genuine feelings. Moran, with her glamorous looks and friendly demeanor, was always the center of attention. Meanwhile, I always existed quietly in her shadow. So my having a family before her must have been an unexpected development for her. Then I suddenly heard Vince's calm voice from the other end of the phone. Susan, I'm truly sorry about earlier. It seems there was a misunderstanding in the information I received from Moran." "A misunderstanding? What do you mean?" "Moran told me to help Michael. Everyone needs to go on this trip, and all the expenses will be borne by Susan, so I'd like you to help us out." So we decided to travel to Mexico. Hearing that, I felt a mix of shock and anger towards Moran's scheming. It was unbelievable that Moran had told Vince such a different story using my name. Considering the situation, I've chosen to return using my own means. "Vince, why would you make such a decision?" "I plan to use my credit card and cash to purchase a new airline ticket to return." "Vince, wait, aren't you getting tickets for us too? Leaving us behind here is unthinkable." Moran's voice, filled with anger and urgency, resonated clearly over the phone. In the background, Michael too was shouting a similar request. "Vince, I'm really begging you. Can't you arrange return tickets for us as well?" "That's impossible." Upon hearing those words, I was taken aback. Indeed, I couldn't accept the fact that Moran and Michael had unauthorized used my card, but I couldn't grasp why Vince was being so cold towards them. After that, Vince dropped a bombshell on me. "Susan, listen carefully. It seems that Michael and Moran have a romantic relationship." "Really?" My surprise peaked, and my mind was in turmoil. Lately, I've noticed that Michael and Moran have become unusually close. Also, I've repeatedly caught the scent of a specific cologne that Michael wears at my house. I started to suspect that something was going on between them. This scent permeated even into the bedroom, making me feel that something was off. Either Michael had spent a lot of time in the room or was doing something there. There wasn't concrete evidence of cheating yet, but something felt wrong. Recently, when the idea of the three of us going to Mexico came up, I made up my mind to find out what they were up to. I decided to go along with them and pretend I didn't notice anything. I swore to myself that if there was anything suspicious, I wouldn't overlook it. I had also felt uneasy about how close Michael and Moran seemed. Although my distrust for Michael grew daily, I didn't want to believe that he was actually involved with Moran. I believed that such a relationship between my sister's husband and anyone was unthinkable. Even if Michael acted inappropriately towards Moran, I genuinely believed she wouldn't reciprocate. That's why I deeply trusted Moran. However, that trust was soon shattered. On the first night of the trip, after 3 o'clock in the morning, I clearly saw Marin sneaking out of her bed and heading to Michael's room. Upon hearing this, it felt like something inside me had collapsed. I made it seem as though I was in deep sleep that night. After getting into bed as usual, I faintly heard the door open. Responding to the sound, I got up and looked down the hallway from the peephole in my door. I then saw you opening Michael's door. Moreover, I clearly saw Michael gently embracing you on the shoulder and welcoming you inside. After this revelation, the room was enveloped in silence. But that can't be right, Vince. You were sound asleep that night. Proof of that is how loudly you were snoring. And there's no reason for me to go to another room. Marin's voice trembled slightly, and she seemed unable to hide her anxiety. That loud snoring was part of my plan. I pretended to be in a deep sleep to observe your actions, and though I hoped I was wrong, I saw you heading to Michael's room. Marin seemed to be thinking of an excuse but remained silent. Though you are in-laws, the fact that Michael often visits our house and every time you greet him with especially vibrant makeup and a beaming smile honestly just felt unnatural to me. Did you think I wouldn't feel anything after learning this truth? That was a huge mistake. After these strong words, the faces of Marin and Michael went pale in front of an infuriated Vince. Both stood speechless. About an hour after you snuck out, you came back and laid down next to me as if nothing had happened. I can't believe you have such a relationship with your brother-in-law. Moreover, on the second night, you secretly left the room and didn't return for about 2 hours. Did you think I hadn't noticed the first night and felt at ease? Actually, I was there. There was a hint of surprise and a slight tremor in her voice. I was just pretending to be sound asleep during this trip, right next to me, and with my brother-in-law, all people. How could you do something like that? Michael, you're being too irresponsible. Vince, to be honest, we carefully chose his words, but a solid excuse didn't come out. Susan, I've made up my mind. I will arrange my own flight ticket and plan to return to the U.S. I will leave these two in Mexico. What do you think? Yes, I also think that's best. Michael, Mary, and both of you should start a new life in Mexico, and there's no need for either of you to come back to the U.S. I think that's the best choice. I responded. Carly, with a smile, said, Michael, please, at least help with the flight costs. I'm really stuck here. I'm begging you. Considering you worked as a bartender before, Michael, finding a part-time job in a bar or restaurant at the airport shouldn't be too difficult. Marin is personable and has a good reputation with men. Perhaps she can excel as PR staff for some establishments. I advised with a hint of sarcasm, but still remained calm. Later on, after hearing the details, Vince was able to smoothly return to the U.S. During that time, Vince and I came up with a specific plan and started executing the necessary steps to carry it out. Between our busy work schedules, Vince and I moved forward with the necessary arrangements and procedures, becoming even more united in our endeavors. On the other hand, we received information that a distressed Michael and Marin managed to find a way to return to the U.S. with the support of their respective families. A few days later, I received an unexpected call from Michael on my cell phone. Susan, what's going on? When I returned home, I couldn't open the apartment door at all. Moreover, there's a tag on the door saying vacant. What's happening? Michael's voice was a mix of confusion and irritation as he questioned me. Oh, is that so? I terminated that apartment lease. What? How? Disbelief and shock were evident in Michael's voice. The lease was under my name, so how? It is my prerogative, right? I just took action based on my wishes. I took a deep breath and calmly responded. But what about my belongings and important stuff? I've sorted everything out. Most of the things you own didn't have much market value, making it hard to sell to buyers. What? I can't believe this. Michael's voice was trembling with shock and disbelief. You should have everything you need from our trip, right? With that alone, you should be able to get by temporarily. If push comes to shove, you'll have to think about how to survive outside. You must be joking. Susan, where are you right now? I won't give you the exact location, but I'm spending time in a new environment with Thea, I answered with a smile. Wait a minute, Susan. I have your gold card and I want to return it, so I want to meet you. There was a strong sense of pleading in his voice. That card's validity period has already expired, so even if you return it, I can't use it anymore, I replied calmly. To tell you the truth, I purposely left the card in an able state for you. It was part of my plan to burden you with a significant debt after our divorce was finalized. What are you talking about? Divorce? What do you mean by debt? If it's proven in court that you used my credit card without permission for large purchases, it will likely be quickly acknowledged when I request a divorce. I can't believe it. I never thought of divorce. Right now, I don't have a place to live or funds. I don't know how I'm going to make a living. That's not my problem. I plan to raise Thea on my own from now on. I'm building a new life towards that goal. Wait, Susan, please listen to me till the end. I'm truly sorry and I want to apologize from the bottom of my heart. I absolutely don't want a divorce. Although I could sense Michael's desperation, I calmly hung up the phone. Maran seemed to be in a similar situation, appearing to have lost her place and was in turmoil. Vince, where are you right now? My key to the apartment isn't working. I don't know how I'm supposed to spend the night. Please do something, Maran pleaded with a tone of despair. I've already let go of that apartment. Our relationship ends here. Any future correspondence will be through lawyers. It's best this way. Don't contact me directly anymore. Goodbye. Wait, Vince, please just hear one thing. My involvement with Michael was only due to his persistent invitations. The only one I truly love is you. For that matter, you seemed pretty happy entering his room during the trip. Seeing you smiling and talking with Michael deeply hurt me. I feel I no longer want to be involved with someone who could do such things. After that, Maran was completely cut off from Vince, losing all means to contact him. A few weeks later, after consulting with professionals, I decided to divorce Michael. The process went smoothly. I carefully wrote and sent letters to both Michael and Maran, demanding appropriate compensation. Michael was also strongly demanded to return the full amount he had spent with the unauthorized use of the credit card. Vince proceeded with a procedure to end his marriage with Maran and later formally demanded a consolation payment from both Michael and Maran. Distraught, Michael and Maran looked for a new place to live and began their life in an old apartment that was about 40 years old. Michael searched for new job opportunities every day, but couldn't immediately find one. However, he desperately made a living with day labor jobs like construction sites and helping with moving. Maran also looked for work to support their life, but having been at home for a long time, it was hard to immediately find a good job. Eventually, Maran took on a night job. The establishment was located in the downtown entertainment district and was known for attracting many male customers. Knowing this, Michael was deeply concerned about her safety and strongly urged Maran to avoid direct contact with the male patrons. Michael didn't fully understand the nature of Maran's job, and his mind was filled with anxiety and doubts. Didn't you also work as a bartender in the past, serving drinks and chatting? It's no different, she argued, reflecting on her past and confronting Michael. This argument resulted in a significant misunderstanding, and the once-loving couple chose different paths. They both became mentally and physically exhausted, forced into a financially difficult life. On the other hand, I acquired rights as Thea's parent and chose the path of a single mother. This decision wasn't easy, but it was necessary for Thea and for my own future. I receive support at work, can take maternity leave, and in an environment where I can raise Thea with peace of mind. My superiors and colleagues are understanding, often offering advice and support. When I return to work, I plan to place Thea in childcare and also get support from my mother to get through daily life. Currently, Thea is growing healthfully and energetically every day. Seeing her smile and growth is my daily motivation. I continue to lead a peaceful life, taking Thea on stroller walks in the park and interacting with other mothers. These park walks also serve as healing moments for both of us. Life has its challenges, but I intend to fully cherish these valuable times with Thea.